Hey, Daddy, this is the man of the champions, Bill Fonzie Alfonso, giving a shout out to
Something else.
something else, Daddy.
This is Nickel Matata, Great Warrior Wolf, and you are listening to Something Else.
I'm Tony Cini, and you're listening to Something Else.
Hey everybody, it's Rich Palladino, the voice of New England, and you are listening to Something Else with Arya.
And welcome to episode number 106 of Something Else. Feast your hair holes on this week's episode as we take a look at Mid-South Wrestling and World-Class Championship Wrestling from 41 years ago today, July 16th, 1983. My name is Arya, and joining me, as always, is the Nick Kroll to my John Mulaney. It's Trey.
Nick Kroll, really? Never mind. You know, it's not even worth engaging about today.
I wanted to make a John Mulaney reference, and Nick Kroll's his best friend, so, you know.
Oh, big Mulaney fan. He's brilliant.
Oh.
You know, now that I think about it, I need to, okay, we are going to see Mark Maron in October. After that, I think Mulaney will probably be our favorite comedian that we've never seen.
Nice. I know he did the last special he had on Netflix, Baby J. I know he taped that in Boston. Sadly, I was unaware of it until, you know, it actually aired on Netflix. I'm like, oh, I could have tried to go to that. But, oh well.
Yeah, he's very funny. I would like, hope I get the chance to see him live. So my wife and I are both like big kind of stand-up comedy nerds. It was like when we met like 15 years ago, it was one of the first things we bonded over, that neither of us had ever met anybody else who was like a big stand-up comedy nerd.
That is really awesome. Now, you gotta, you know, give people an update here. As a lot of people know, Trey, you live in Texas, and as some people may know, there was a teeny tiny little weather event that recently went through Texas and impacted you. You want to talk about it?
Stand back. There's a hurricane coming through.
Done.
Yeah. So with weather stuff, like I grew up in Arkansas, where we had tornado scares pretty regularly. So I just grew up like never taking the weather that seriously. So I never think it's going to be that bad. And I mean, it was pretty bad. Like I didn't suffer any harm. I was safe in my house the whole time. But I live in Houston, so we actually thought originally that it was going to hit like down around Corpus Christi and that it might like dissipate more by the time it got to us. But I think it either hit further north or it just stayed strong for longer. Because we had it pretty rough. Now, the worst of it happened from like about 4 a.m. to noon on Monday. And honestly, I slept through most of it. I woke up when the power went out because I require 2 things to sleep. I require my CPAP machine and a fan, and both went off. So I went, my wife recently bought an electric generator. It's not like a gas power generator. It's one that you plug into the wall and charge it, and then you've got, you know, so much energy. So I ended up like, I was sitting pretty for about the first, day and a half or so. The second night, my generator died, and I was getting to the point on Tuesday evening that I was about to start having to make some decisions about how I was going to do to charge my phone and stuff. but then like right when I was starting to have to seriously consider it, my power came back on. So power's been back. I was only out of power for about 36 hours. Was without internet until Thursday evening, and then it's been very in and out. Like it seems like it'll come on for like 6 to 12 hours and then go off for 6 to 12 hours and come back on. So if I sound different than I usually do, it's because normally I'm on my computer with a DSL hookup and my nice microphone. But so I'm trying to do this like with earbuds on my phone over like cellular data.
Okay. So yeah, if Trae goes out, well, we'll have to forge on without him until he gets back on. But, we're happy to hear you got through everything, and was there any damage to your home?
Not to my home, I don't believe. Here's the thing. It was not as much rain as like Hurricane Harvey was, but the wind was way worse. Worst wind I've ever heard. That was the one part that was, I didn't pay a lot of attention to it and I slept through most of it, but I do remember texting my wife like, yeah, the wind is fucking gnarly. So we have like a privacy fence that goes around, like the back 3/4 of our house. And the back fence is gone. It completely blew over into the back behind us neighbor's yard, and they've gotten rid of it. Another panel on the side between us and the neighbors that we get along with real well, like that has fallen inward. So we're gonna have to try to figure out what to do about that. And here's the thing, and I don't want to get too deep into this because it's still a little uncertain, but we have been in the process of trying to buy this house. There's been a little hang up with like the owner's got some tax or government loan nonsense tied up in it that we're having to deal with, so it's been delayed. But yeah, so well, the one good thing was that we have these 2 dead pine trees in the front yard that we were about to have like that was going to be the first thing we did when we bought the house. We were going to pay to get those trees removed, and one of them, the one that was really bad, fell down in the storm. So instead of paying $600 or whatever to have it cut down, I paid some guys $50 to just clear it out of my driveway. But yeah, lost the tree I needed to get rid of anyway. Broke my wife's treasured, she has like a big glow in the dark spinny flower thing that you just stake in the yard and you can see it. Like you always know which houses are because you see that thing. That got broken, so we've already ordered another one. Yeah, that and the fence I think are the only real damage. We are going to have to, we don't think that we can just go to the owners about the fence since we're like in the process of buying it anyway. So we're probably just going to have to wait until we get it done and then figure out what we're going to do about our fence.
According to an article I'm seeing on MSNBC, Texas's power grid was not made for the rapid succession of storms it sees now. So hopefully you guys get some updates down there, because it looks like you were one of 2.26 million people who lost power there for a little while. And this is the 3rd major storm to hit you guys in less than 2 months.
Yep, and we also live in Texas where all of our government officials are fucking idiots.
Oh, Lord. Yeah, that is an understatement. So I've mentioned on the show before, I forget if you were on the show at this point or not, but when I lived in Florida very briefly back in the day, we lived there long enough for Hurricane Andrew. And we had some relatives up near Jacksonville. We were in Port St. Lucie, which is kind of near Orlando. So we went up to Jacksonville, and I mean, it's better to be safe than sorry, but it turned out the hurricane avoided us entirely. So hooray for that. But yeah, I lived in Florida for hurricane, moved back to Pennsylvania in time for blizzard. all I needed left was to move to the Midwest for a tornado thing.
Yeah. So here's a bit of lore about me. I actually we got hit by a tornado when I was like 4 months old, and we lived in a trailer at the time. It destroyed our house there, and I ended up I got a splinter in my nose that the doctor had to remove. So for decades afterwards, it was like our family doctor, and he whenever he saw my mom, he'd ask about the tornado baby. So I was a tornado baby, and because of that, I firmly believe that I'm immune to tornadoes. It's like Harry Potter and Voldemort. You couldn't kill me when I was a baby. What are you gonna do to me now?
It's like Ric Flair and plane crashes.
Exactly. I have made that exact comparison before. It's funny. My wife was actually in Florida this week. So she was the 2 days or one of the days that I was sitting here without power, just fucking pouring sweat. My wife was at Disney World.
How is she doing? Has she come back yet?
Yeah, she got back Thursday. She had a good time.
That's good. And she got to avoid the hurricane, so that's always a win too.
Yeah, you think her and a friend that went, they're saying they felt bad because they were at Disney World and everybody back home was in a crisis, and what the fuck are you gonna do? It's not like you could do anything more. If you were here, might as well do your thing you were gonna do and have fun.
Might as well, it's it's fine to worry about you guys, but once it was proven that you guys are safe, or as safe as you can be, it's well, sitting around worrying isn't going to make anything better. So you might as well take advantage of your surroundings.
And
now,
I was never unsafe or anything. The worst problem that I had was I couldn't get my car out of the garage, which means I couldn't go anywhere. Which the sucky part about that is when my generator died, I couldn't go and charge stuff in the car because I'll give myself carbon monoxide poisoning and kill myself. So
now,
but yeah, I was safe the whole time.
I tend to spend way too much time both at the shoot job and preparing for wrestling podcasts. Did you guys have much warning about this ahead of time? I don't remember there being much of a heads up.
Oh yeah, we knew it was coming. Like I said, my wife, who gets very anxious about the weather, was warning me about it for days beforehand. Like I said, I didn't really take it that seriously, but yeah, it ended up being pretty significant. It's funny if you walk, kind of drive around the area where I live. Number one, a ton of fences are down. Everybody who had privacy fences, so many of them are just there's a big a part of it or all of it that's just gone now. And then everybody has huge piles of limbs and debris and fence posts and all kinds in their piled up in their yard for pickup. It looks like the people directly across the street from me, the mariachi band, they look like they lost a whole deck or something, or a piece of fence or something. There's a lot of wood in that pile. But yeah, it really probably I didn't grow up in a hurricane area. I grew up in a tornado area, but it's probably I think it's the worst wind damage I've ever seen.
Now, we're recording this Saturday night, and there's been some tragic news being reported in the last few hours. And I think everybody listening to this knows exactly what I'm talking about. And that would be the death of Richard Simmons and Dr. Ruth. Now, Richard, yes. Richard Simmons,
Tragedy.
everyone's favorite fitness guru. Dr. Ruth, everyone's favorite little old sex doctor. I honestly, I was shocked, and this always sounds horrible when you say these things, I was shocked to find out she was still alive. Because, like, in my head, growing up when I was a kid, she was 96 then. But no, she was 96 now when she passed on here. I think it's either today or yesterday as we're recording this. And of course, Richard,
It's one of those. It's one of those like there's a term for it, like a parallel university or something. Like the Berenstain and the Berenstain Bears, or like was it a Shaq movie called Kazam, or a Sinbad movie called Shazam, or did what was the guy, the black president of South Africa?
Mandela.
Yeah, did Mandela die in prison in the 80s? One of the things is like when you picture Richard Simmons, you always imagine him with a sweatband on his head. But if you go back and look at the footage, like all the footage, he's never wearing a fucking sweatband.
Really? Because I can totally
Yeah.
see him with a sweatband on.
Yeah, no, I watched like I don't remember if it was on TikTok or YouTube, but all like, yeah, he's never wearing a fucking sweatband.
Interesting.
The one, my wife and I are both huge Family Guy fans, and we have been like since the day it debuted. And so we quote Family Guy to each other all the time. So I had to, when I told her about the passing of Richard Simmons, I had to do the, "Aren't you Richard Simmons?" And then, "Aren't you Richard Simmons' best friend, Richard Simmons?"
Oh Lord! Back in the day when Family Guy was really good.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah,
I still, I can say both that I still enjoy it while also admitting that it's not the greatest quality anymore. Here's the thing. When I watch shows like that, I want it to be fucking stupid. Like that's why I'm watching it. And that's why I don't get like I guess I don't have as lofty as expectations of Family Guy as some people do. I expect it to be fucking stupid.
honestly, it's like with anything. Like The Simpsons have been on the air forever. Fucking South Park has been on the air almost 30 years. It's like honestly, you get more stupidity sometimes and you get actual funny moments, but I find maybe it's because so much of these shows aren't really that funny anymore. But I always find the things that are actually funny are absurdly funny. And yeah.
Yeah.
By the way,
So
Googling Richard Simmons, yeah, there's not a single picture of him with a headband.
is it like The Big Bang Theory is a dumb show about smart people. Beavis and Butthead is a smart show about dumb people. Family Guy is just a dumb show about dumb people. And I don't know, I'm sure somewhere out there is a smart show about smart people, but I ain't never seen it.
I will always say that The Big Bang Theory holds up better than Modern Family because Modern Family was really funny for like the first 5 or 6 seasons, and then it fell off a fucking cliff. And while Big Bang Theory, good, bad, otherwise, tended to be pretty much the same level throughout the series. And I'm not going to say that I, fell over laughing watching The Big Bang Theory, but I'll admit there were definitely a lot of episodes that I legitimately laughed at. The same with Modern Family, the same with most sitcoms. Like, if I'm going to watch a sitcom, I want to laugh. And,
Yeah, and I was I really liked The Big Bang Theory. You know what I didn't expect to like, but I ended up loving was Young Sheldon.
the first season or so, when it was all about Sheldon, I didn't care for it. I thought they were trying too hard to squeeze in stories that are from, the Big Bang Theory that he talked about, from
Yeah,
back. But I think when it got to where they started fleshing out the other characters more, whereas mom became more than,
yeah.
the church lady, his dad was more than just a football coach, his sister and brother did more than just sit in the background. It's like it's kind of like
So
Orange is the New Black, towards the end, seasons 4, 5, and 6, Piper Chapman was the least enjoyable character on the show, and she was theoretically the main character.
I stopped watching after the Riot season.
That I, I thought it was good, but it was hard to get through because it's like, they were only putting out one season a year, which I mean, of course, that's what all shows do. And it was all dropping all at the same time. And it's like, okay, here are your 10 episodes for this entire year. And it's 10 episodes all about the riots. And it's like, it was a tough one to get.
So again, can I talk Young Sheldon spoilers?
I would think so, since the show is officially off the air.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Like
the show ended
like it's
spoiler alert.
Yeah. So it's established very early on The Big Bang Theory that Sheldon's father died when he was a teenager. And then as you watch Young Sheldon, like the character of Sheldon's father is a completely different man than like the picture that older Sheldon portrayed him as. Like they portrayed him as like an alcoholic philanderer. And he was such a good dad and such a wonderful character. And then everybody was like rationalizing, well, maybe they won't kill him off. Maybe they won't do it on screen. And it got to the point that like it was the semi-penultimate episode. So like that episode and then 2 episodes after. It was to the point that something that you knew was coming, but you forgot about. And then the way they hit you with the father's death was like one of the most emotionally devastating. Like it's not as traumatic because it wasn't as violent, but in terms of like an emotional, oh my God, it was like it was when like when they killed Poussey on Orange is the New Black.
Oh yeah. It's like I didn't know where they were gonna go because they never did the story where Sheldon caught his dad cheating on his mom, because that was mentioned in the
Okay. They actually did. They actually did resolve that in the last season.
But that was Missy, not so much catching him cheating, but it was Missy catching her dad and what's her name, Billy's mom, as
Brenda.
flirting with each other, or, whatever they were doing.
Yeah, no. So the story that Sheldon told on The Big Bang Theory was that when he was 14 or whatever, he like walked into the room and saw his father with another woman, and then that was the reason that he always knocks 3 times. But then you see in the last season of Young Sheldon, it's after like him and his mom get back from Germany because he did like a summer in Germany, and so he walked in and he thought his dad was with another woman, but it was his mom in a blonde wig.
I somehow don't remember that. Like I think like especially the first few episodes of the last season, because it was the post-hurricane season. It's like, okay, I'm just kind of. Oh no, it wasn't a hurricane; it was a tornado.
Yeah.
Tornado season. Honestly, I loved Dr. Sturgis as
Yes.
friend, especially, and it's like it's sad they didn't find a way to get them back together. Although Mima was with Fallon.
Dale.
Yeah.
Craig T. Nelson. Yeah, I like. My dad always watched Coach, so I appreciated seeing Craig T. Nelson.
And we were talking about corner gas last week, and I just always, whenever I think of Coach, I think of Lacey, who didn't know what Coach was, and she's like, "Oh yeah, when Hank was really good at Scrabble," and she's like, "Okay, I'll be Coach, and you'll be the guy who coached Coach."
Yeah, so I went back through all 6 seasons of Corner Gas and the movie, and now I'm going back through the animated series.
6 seasons in a movie. Speaking of which, it's sad that we're not getting the Community movie this year, because I guess what's his name, Jeff Winger is his real life is making delays in the production of this movie.
I tried to watch that show once. I didn't really get into it.
Honestly, the first couple episodes, like with most shows, the first couple episodes sometimes are a little hard to get through, but around
Yeah.
episode 8 or 9 of the first season, I think is where it really hits its
Yeah.
groove.
So that makes sense. Because, like, the first season of Parks and Recreation is, like, notoriously bad.
Oh, yeah. First season of Parks and Rec, first season of The Office, just skip those, you know, you're someone who's never seen either show.
I finally started watching The Office a couple of years ago, and then it moved to a different streaming service, and I never picked it up again.
Like, I want to say, you know, after the show originally went off the air, but still around, I don't know, 2015, 2016, my friend Stephanie encouraged me to watch it, and I think it was on Comedy Central at the time, or if not, it was syndicating somewhere. Not Comedy Central, it was somewhere. And it was the basketball episode, which, in my opinion, is one of the weaker episodes. And I was just like, okay, this isn't a very good episode. And so I just kind of gave up on the show. And then during the pandemic, when I was just needing something to fucking watch, I'm like, you know what? Let's watch The Office. And I watched it. I loved it. Then, like most people, I didn't really care for season 9, mostly because I loved Dwight. I didn't love how, since he was now the main character, it was like, okay, we need to have him do goofy shit every week on TV because he's the main character. Like, the goofy shit was second tier or was once every couple episodes. It wasn't so much when it's now being forced down your throat because he's the main character of the show. And
I know. I'm sorry, finish.
I was going to say, I'm not a big Jim and Pam fan, but I'm with everybody who didn't care for the forced relationship drama between Jim and Pam.
Now, I know you like Corner Gas. Are you into Letterkenny?
I haven't checked that out.
Oh, man. Yeah, I would recommend Letterkenny. It's very Canadian. It's a different kind of Canadian than Corner Gas. It's a lot snarkier. I mean, it's like... It's about like a small town that's roughly about the size of my hometown. So it's like, it's really relatable because even though they're in like rural Ontario, the experience of being in a town of about 5,000 people is universal. And it's just like the banter is just like constant.
I'll have to find a way to ask Lance Storm if he recommends it, because that's how I started watching Corner Gas.
That is also why I started watching Corner Gas.
Thank you, Lance Storm, for convincing 2 Americans to watch a Canadian sitcom.
You know, we've been talking for like 30 minutes, and we have not. The Lance Storm was like our first mention of pro wrestling.
I've been looking at the clock, going, "Yeah, this is going to be one of those shows, isn't it?" The list of what we've discussed is getting long, and it has nothing to do with wrestling.
This is the Hurricane and TV shows.
Why don't we talk about some wrestling? How does that sound?
Yeah, sure.
All right, let's talk about Mid-South Wrestling, July 16th, 1983, from the Irish McNeil Boys Club in Shreveport, Louisiana. Let's go to the intro of the show with Boyd Pierce and Casual Bill Watts.
Hello, wrestling fans, and welcome to this week's edition of Mid-South Wrestling Television Network. I'm your host for the next 60 minutes. I'm Boyd Pierce, and we have a lot of action. You're going to see the return to Mid-South Wrestling this week of Steve Dr. Death Williams. Hacksaw Jim Dugan pairs up with popular Magnum TA as they take on Russian Boris Zirkov and Rip Rogers. The big match, Johnny Rich versus Ted DiBiase. All the top stars are here, and the man that'll tell you about it is our guest commentator, the Oklahoma Stampeder, but now Mr. Wrestling in Mid-South, and I'll tell you that because he knows more than anybody. That's Cowboy Bill Watts. Bill, and I mean it sincerely.
Well, thank you, Boyd. You know, it's great to have Steve Dr. Death Williams back from playing ball with the New Jersey Generals of the USFL. Steve weighs about 300 pounds right now and planning on playing football next year with the Denver Gold. Also, I think another match that's a real sleeper on the card is George Weingeroff against Hacksaw Butch Reed. George wrestled at University of Tennessee at Chattanooga and is a tremendous competitor. and we've not seen him lose any bouts here on Mid-South Wrestling on television either. But right now, let's go to Reeser Bowden in the first match. It's in the ring.
Okay. I watched this show about 2 weeks ago at this point, and I believe
Really?
I Facebooked you about how I raged at the intro of this show. If I didn't, I meant to. What the fuck is he talking?
What about it made you?
George Weingeroff lost on TV like 3 weeks ago to Boris Zirkov and Mr. in a tag team match.
Yeah, I thought that wasn't right, but I didn't put that much thought into it either.
It's like, motherfucker, like, do you remember when WWE in like 2007 or 2008 started pushing Snitsky again when he dyed his teeth yellow and all that shit?
Yeah.
And then like 1 week on Raw, randomly Vince McMahon booked John Cena versus the undefeated Snitsky. And it's like, motherfucker, this guy was a step above jobber for like 3 years and now he's undefeated. At least that kind of made sense in the sense of, okay, in his new role, in his new push, Snitsky hasn't been defeated. George Weingeroff is not in a new role. He's not in a new push. He like never wins. I am convinced that, they fucking signed his mortgage or something. And so it's like everyone in the company is behind getting George Weingeroff over.
Boy, they are, aren't they? Fucking DiBiase, and then fucking Watts this week was all about him, so George Weingeroff.
By the way, I called him Casual Bill Watts because he took the jacket off between tapings. He has no tie. He's unbuttoned the top 3 buttons of his shirt. It's like he is looking very casual on this week's show.
So I had this thought last week, and I don't remember if I voiced it or not, but why is Bill Watts still the guest commentator when he's like the default color commentator every week that it's not someone else? Like, okay, I've watched, I think, about 8 or 9 weeks of this now. I think he's been the commentator for all but 2 of them.
Honestly, like, it made more sense last year when we started doing this at the end of 81 because they were pretty all over the place with guest commentators. We had DiBiase, we had Bob Roop, we had Big Cat Ernie Ladd, Dusty Rhodes was commentating 1 week, and of course Bill Watts periodically. They had Jim Ross from ESPN Rodeo on 1 week. It was like, it made more sense to call him the guest commentator then when, they were going all over the place with the commentators. But yeah, at this point, it's pretty much, semi-permanent, I'll say, because Jim Ross from ESPN Rodeo is on his way back at some point soon, I know. And
speaking of Jim Ross, you know what I did? How I spent about 11 hours of the 36 hours I didn't have electricity?
Reading his book?
Yeah, I looked at my Audible to see what I had downloaded, and the most recent thing was I bought the audiobook of his new book, Business is About to Pick Up. That's like kind of his career through like his 50 greatest calls or whatever. It's pretty.
We lost you there for a second. It's pretty what?
That was pretty good.
Good. I've been thinking about picking that up, but I've got so many books I haven't read right now on my Kindle that even though I know I'll just buy more anyway, it's like I should probably try reading a few of those first.
Yeah, I'm trying to get through a lot more of the wrestling books that I have. I finally finished Tim Hornbaker's Ric Flair biography. That was pretty good. And then since I've been doing all the 93 stuff because of the Smoky Mountain show, I've been reading like the Wrestling Observer like yearbook for 1993. And that's pretty hefty reading.
It is. So you kind of already know where we're going with the what else is happening this week in wrestling this week over on the Smoky Mountain show, which That's
I
gonna be
can't even think of what it is this week.
honestly, it's like nothing like revolutionary, whatever. It's just, it's April 1993 in a nutshell, kind of. But anyway, let's instead of talking about April 1993, we're gonna go back a little bit back to July of 1983. For our opening match, it's Arn Anderson with Derby and Big Boy Williams versus Dr. Death Steve Williams with his University of Oklahoma bathrobe and a blue singlet, and his partner Joe Stark. Of the four
Oh
people,
my God.
I was the least interested in Joe Stark.
You see, I feel a little kinship to Joe Stark, the prior to Jonesboro, Arkansas, Joe Stark.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with Joe Stark, but it's like I have Arn Anderson, Dr. Death Steve Williams, Big Boy Williams. And by the way, is Big Boy Williams and Dr. Death Steve Williams, are they related?
I don't know, but I did enjoy. Watch was going to have to make the remark, we're going to see who the real Big Boy Williams is. This felt like a match that the universe made just for me. It was great. I loved it. They got the heat on the pride of Jonesboro, Arkansas, Joe Stark, and then Doc got the hot tag and wrecked their shit, and it was awesome.
I wrote Doc tagged in with Big Boy and nearly murdered him with football tackles.
Yes.
Arn took one and ran for the hills pretty much. And then the finish, I love this finish. Doc picks Big Boy up for the Oklahoma Stampede, but he backs into the heel corner where Arn Anderson is there and could theoretically blind tag himself in. And Arn Anderson not only doesn't try to tag in, doesn't try to help out Big Boy Williams, he ran down the apron to avoid it. And Doc hit the move.
It's funny. The quality of the fucking job guys on these shows, it's like you've got a lot of guys that are just there. They can take bumps and get pinned. And then on a tier way the fuck above, you've got like Rip Rogers and Arn Anderson.
Oh, by the way, I meant to mention, since Bill Watts is now Mr. Wrestling in Louisiana, has that moved Mr. Wrestling 2 down to Mr. Wrestling 3?
I wish that it had been like I wish that Johnny Walker had like children that became wrestlers, so we could have had like Mr. Wrestling 2 Junior and be like real. Like my favorite thing right now, I'm not like a big lucha fan, but I love that Villano Tercera, Villano III he has two sons that are wrestlers, and one is Villano Tercera Jr. and the other one is El Hijo del Villano Tercera. And what I really want to know is if both of those sons have sons who become wrestlers, which one gets to be El Hijo del Villano Tercera Jr.?
See, I'm just sad that they didn't keep going with the Villano name and go Villano 6, Villano 7, etc.
That's what they should have done.
Oh well.
I often wish that I had come up with like a really great wrestling screen name back in the day and kept it for all these years. And I wish I would have come up with something funny, like, I don't know, Villano 69 or something.
Which pretty much nobody who saw that would get it, of course. Now, of course,
but it would just be for me. Like at one point, I was at one point Tiger Mask 420.
Now, if you had become Villano 69, I would have fully expected you to spell it out in Roman numerals. So Villano LXI.
I just this year learned Roman numerals past 39 because of WrestleMania 40.
Interesting. Aren't you a football fan?
No.
Oh, I thought you were. So, yeah, you'll just love our NFL preview segment that we do every year. Then it goes about 20 seconds and consists of me proclaiming that the Bills will be undefeated and win the Super Bowl. So that our annual NFL preview segment coming up in September.
Can't wait.
So from here, Watts pitches it to a handicap match from World Class that I've seen at least, where Kamala beat Bill Radke and Tom Ernesto, and then the Mongol General Skandor Akbar and Friday were at ringside. Were you around for this match? Is this a repeat for you?
No, I think this happened like a month before I came around because it was taped April 15th at the Sportatorium.
Right, yeah, I mean, obviously you didn't miss anything, and you know, I didn't
I
see.
like the rescue.
We got King Kong Bundy and Art Cruz here. I note that it's becoming obvious in some ways that Mid South is turning into an early '80s version of the late '80s WWF, where we're getting one hoss after another on these shows. And Watts points out that if you include Kamala, this is our third straight match with someone over 300 pounds. And that is actually going to be one of the issues we have over the next 4 or 5 months until Bill Dundee, or I'm sorry, not Bill Dundee. Well, actually, Bill Dundee does take over as Booker, but until Watts asks Jerry Jarrett what's wrong with his territory, is that Watts brings in a lot of monsters. And so this is what we've got to look forward to until the fall.
Because the Tennessee territory not known for its monsters.
Well, yes, but I mean the Tennessee territory also had the fabulous ones, the Rock and Roll Express, Bobby Eaton. I mean Dennis Condrey, I wouldn't call him a sex symbol, but I mean, they're gonna bring in a lot more good-looking wrestlers, which is actually, as wacky as it always sounds, like it helped bring the girls out to the shows to see Mid-South get a lot of squealing, later this year and early next year.
I keep holding out hope that this show is finally going to get good when the Midnight Express gets here. Which they get here. They get here in like December, right?
November, but yeah. And
yeah, because the first TV was like Thanksgiving.
Because they bring Watts brings in Jerry Jarrett in October to look at everything, and that's when they make a talent trade, and that's where the Midnight Express, the Rock and Roll, and all them come over. And
this is a very well-known story because Jim Cornette has recounted it many times because he was like, he'd been in the business fucking like a year and a half, 2 years. He hadn't done anything. He was the second string. Like he managed Jimmy Hart's guys on the spot shows that were too small for Jimmy Hart to go to. So that was when essentially Watts and Jarrett were like, Watts said, you come look at my guys, you can have anybody except Dog. And Jarrett said, you come look at my guys, you can have anybody except Lawler. And then Watts came out better on the trade because he got the Midnight Express, he got Bill Dundee to book, he got eventually the Rock and Roll Express, and I think Jerry Jarrett got a very green Rick Rude and like Crusher Broomfield one-man gang.
Yeah,
I can't remember who all.
And I imagine Jerry Jarrett did not mind having some more green wrestlers on his show.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that by the time we hit the downward part of the curve on this world class boom, we're gonna be on the upward curve of Mid-South.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, I don't really know when world class starts a downward trend. It may be when Kerry wins the world title, but
I don't think it's till after David dies. That's like less than a year from now.
It's February, and that's also around the time of the Cornette Bill Watts feud starting. So it's one is going to lead to another, in a weird way. By the way, in case
this is going to be fun, we're gonna they're not going to be at the same time. We're going to get to the Smoky Mountain one first, but we're going to get We're going to see him redo the angle before we see him do the angle, because he's going to redo it with Bob Armstrong and Smoky Mountain, more or less a redo of the last Stampede angle with Bill Watts.
Yeah, I guess it is. That'll happen first on Smoky Mountain by a few months. By the way, I should note that Jerry Lawler does shots for Mid-South. And at the end of this year, there is an episode of Mid-South where the commentating team is Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler.
You know, I knew that because he wrote about it in the book I just read.
By the way, in case there is any doubt whatsoever, King Kong Bundy did defeat Art Cruz in this match.
Yeah, minute 57 seconds, Avalanche, 5 count. Watts definitely was in this and the first match. He is teasing heavily the idea of Bundy versus Dr. Death.
This match went 1 minute 57 seconds, and it took us about 5 minutes and 57 seconds to get through it. Boris Zirkov and Rip Rogers are out next to go 2-on-2 with Jim Dugan and Magnum TA. Not sure why Dugan isn't teaming with Johnny Rich since they're 2-0 as a team, but let's be honest, no one wants to team with Johnny Rich.
Johnny Rich has a big match against Ted DiBiase tonight.
It is the main event of the show, allegedly.
They moved Zirkov down the card real fucking quick, didn't they?
Oh my God. I think I looked to see how much longer Zirkov's at, because I'm like, oh my God, is he already being written out of the show? But I think he's here till at least the end of the year, actually. So it's not quite that much. Yeah. It's like,
does he go to Dallas after this?
If he does, we'll find out.
He's going to end up. He'll end up in the WWF eventually, but I don't think that's until like 88, 89. When did the Bolsheviks start?
I just watched Survivor Series 87, and he was in that. So at least the end of 87. By the way, this match began with Rip Rogers bitch slapping Jim Duggan twice.
Yes. Oh my God. That was entertainment, man. It's funny. I keep saying in every time, in every place, on all these shows that I watch, there was Rip Rogers doing TV jobs. But it's like he's other than like a special case where you've got a very young version of a top talent, like we've got Arn Anderson in the territory now. Other than situations like that, Rip Rogers is like by far the best of all these enhancement guys.
By the way, not only does Dugan beat the fuck out of Rip Rogers, TA takes Boris out of the ring, so he can't even like slide out and let Boris take over. So Duggan just destroys the shit out of Rip. The match settles down. The faces take turns beating on Boris. Rip was begging Duggan to not be brought back into the ring, but that got ignored. After what seemed like 5 minutes of the faces shining, Boris put a knee into TA's back from the apron to actually get the heat. The heat lasted all of 21 seconds, which is, somehow less than the amount of heat that Jimmy Garvin got in the World Class main event. But TA reverses the sunset flip and makes the hot tag, and the faces won with a combo atomic drop and spear on Rip Rogers.
That was actually a cool little tag finisher for 1983.
It's still weird seeing Magnum TA using the atomic drop as the finish. Especially,
didn't Rip Rogers like train Randy Orton and Brock Lesnar and Batista and those guys?
Oh, yeah, he was one of the trainers in OVW.
Had a hand in training John Cena. Cena was trained by like Rick Bassman initially, right?
Yeah, and I mean, apparently he was in the business for like 3 weeks before he got signed by WWE, and hey, of all the signings they did, that one worked out for them.
You know what's a weird thing is I remember, like, at the time, obviously, I had no idea who John Cena was or who he was going to become. But I remember watching him on that MTV True Life, I'm a Professional Wrestler. It was about him, like, early in his training. And, like, 1999, 2000.
Wasn't that when he was like eating all this meat or whatever?
I don't remember. It's been like I saw it like at the time. I don't. And then it took like later. I realized like, oh yeah, that was that guy.
By the way, John Cena's dad, John Cena, is a really nice guy. I mean, I'm sure John Jr. is too, but I never met him, so I can't attest to that. I did meet John Sr., and I can attest that he's a great guy.
He seems like a very nice man.
So Ted DiBiase is out next for a main event match, allegedly against Johnny Rich. But let's go to our good friend Reese Bowden here to discuss what the hell's going on.
I see that Ted DiBiase's opponent, Johnny Rich, comes to the ring with trousers on and his hand in a bandage. What is this?
Racer. You know, I was injured in a match a little bit earlier, and I seen the doctor, and he told me that I shouldn't wrestle with it. So I'm going to have a substitute today. DiBiase, you most
Wait a minute, that's the sorriest excuse I've ever heard. There's nothing wrong with your hand. You're just afraid, Rich. You're just a coward.
I've got somebody.
You're just a coward.
I got somebody that'll take care of you, DiBiase.
I don't care what you got, Rich. Just get on out of here.
You most of all,
I don't even like looking at cowards. Just get on out.
Well, Johnny Rich says that he has a substitute, but we're waiting on that substitute right now. I don't know if this has been approved by matchmaker Grizzly Smith or not, but we'll soon find out. Well, Johnny Rich says, he says that he has, here he comes. That substitute is Hacksaw Duggan.
Ooh, I love Reeser. It's like, you know, it's obviously, you know, WWE is a little more loosey-goosey than they used to be nowadays with Hunter in charge. But it's like, especially when we started watching this show, like WWE was so, you know, not fun at times or not willing to experiment, that like Reeser was like the greatest announcer ever because he'd do this or he'd introduce a match saying that it's with the big men and the little girls, you know, shit that you would never hear on TV. Yeah, they did a mixed tag match with full-sized men and mini women against.
I remember that actually. It's like either late 81 or very early 82. I watched that far into it a couple of years ago.
I think it was the very first episode we did. So it's like December 81.
Yeah.
And
just remember Bill Boyd Pierce kept saying the little midget girl wrestlers.
Oh my God, right before you came on, they had they were promoting a midget tag team match for like 6 weeks because they taped it, and then like they would just have too much stuff on the show. So that tag match just kept being pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. And finally they aired it, and it was during a Jim Duggan heel run, and like it aired after Jim Duggan turned babyface. So they're still talking about, oh, that awful Jim Duggan just did this heinous act. Like they didn't even do new commentary. It was hilarious.
I'm surprised that Watts would allow that. I'm surprised he didn't make them re-record it.
I'm not ish. Because like technology really wasn't that good in 1983 to be able to do that shit, because there was an episode, and I don't remember exactly when it was, but I think it was January of 83, where the audio for whatever was originally recorded must have shit the bed because they had to record over it, and it's like they had no audience noise at all, and you could see the audience in the background making noise, but they didn't have a separate audio track for it. And so, you know, you just had, I think it may have been Boyd and Bill, you know, commenting over a silent matches, because like there's no ring noise, no crowd noise, nothing. It was just really messed up.
It'd be very disconcerting.
By the way, speaking of Jim Duggan, he's in this match with Ted DiBiase. Duggan runs wild to the approval of the crowd. DiBiase gets knocked out of the ring, and when Duggan rolls him back in, DiBiase was able to catch him and to take over briefly. Duggan doesn't sell for long as he just keeps beating on DiBiase. Finally, the fans were going nuts, and I wrote, "Kids are fighting each other." as Bundy runs in for the DQ. I don't know where I got the kids are fighting each other thing, so I'm gonna, while you say whatever you're gonna say, I'm gonna fast forward the video to see what the hell I'm talking about.
I have no memory of kids fighting each other. So this match was like really quite good for 3 minutes. You know, shock. Like a match between two actual top guys was better than most of the matches that we get on this show. And it didn't last long, but it was a good 3 minutes and 3 seconds.
Indeed.
Then a bunch of baby faces hit the ring and finally managed to run the heels off.
I'm like watching here and I'm like looking at the crowd and okay, there's a little black kid jumping up and down, but he's not fighting with anybody. Let me rewind a little bit here because I'm like, this is what happens when you watch these shows 2 weeks in advance. Oh, here we go. There's two kids in the front row. They're both leaping up to point at Bundy, and they kind of run into each other and they start shoving each other. So yeah, two kids are fighting each other on TV here this week, and yeah. By the way, Joe Stark ran in, got his ass kicked. Rich ran in with his injured arm, but he got his ass kicked. Magnum TA ran in, he got his ass kicked. And finally, Junkyard Dog ran in, and he did not get his ass kicked, and instead he ran off all the heels because Junkyard Dog is not going to get his ass kicked that frequently.
Junkyard Dog clearly at a much higher power level than all the other baby faces.
Indeed.
Hacksaw.
I've
been thinking about that. I'm sorry. It's just a silly thought about like power levels is like you know in video games or anime or whatever, different characters have their power levels, and like we should figure out a way to think about wrestling more in those terms, but figure out a way that it makes sense. Because there's clearly like it's the way that we quantify that as wrestling fans is like, you know, like you can figure it out because it's like according to somebody's push and their stuff like that. But I don't know. We need to I think just spitballing ideas about quantifying power levels. Yet another wrestling study that I would write if I actually cared enough about anything to try to write something. And I had another book idea that I'm going to bring up on the Smoky Mountain podcast this week.
Okay. Hopefully you made a note of it so we remember to talk about it. At this point in like 3 hours when we finish this show. But we then get Hacksaw Butch Reed versus the undefeated George Weingeroff. As long as you ignore all the times Weingeroff has lost, he is undefeated. And apparently he is almost totally officially blind, which I'm assuming is why we ignore all of his losses. And he's actually here until March of '84, so we will listen to everyone blow him until then.
Yeah.
Reed beat the shit out of Weingeroff. So Weingeroff tries to get the sympathy of all the fans. Well, he doesn't get Butch Reed's sympathy. This is the longest fucking match we've seen on this show in months. It goes almost 9 minutes, which I get does not sound like much, but it's a 43-minute show where the vast majority of the matches, including main events, are going between 3 and 6 minutes. So yeah, this match going 9 minutes, it was long. Holy shit.
Most of what I wrote about this match was an analysis of how unnecessarily long it felt. Because like Reed is clearly the more pushed act. So like Reed's gonna win. But they've given George Weingeroff enough lately that like it has been established that George Weingeroff's power level is such that you can't have Butch Reed just steamroll him like he's any job guy. So they had to have an ostensibly competitive match that everyone knew wasn't that competitive. And it really, Reed pretty much walked the dog on George Weingeroff, but it went a very unnecessary 8 minutes and 52 seconds. I have a whole star and a half, which is not a good return on 9 minutes.
Yeah, there's a I was watching Tablet Combat 90 Return of RoboCop, and there is a Mean Mark Callis Johnny Ace match that goes like 12 minutes. That was somehow shorter than this match. And believe me, that match was not any good at all. I should not make it sound like I'm being complimentary towards The Undertaker versus John Laurinaitis, because it was not. And
you ever watched Chi-Town Rumble '89?
Yes.
There's a match between Michael Hayes and the Russian Assassin, which I think is Jack Victory on that show, but it goes like 20 fucking minutes.
Yep. There's a clash. I think the Clash of the Champions, that was like 2 days beforehand. There was a Butch Reed, I think Scott Casey match that went like 20 minutes. What is with Butch Reed being in these long ass matches that don't need to go that long?
I don't get it.
Blame George Scott for that. And by the way, we were talking about Boris Zukov earlier. I lied. He's only here until September. But then, yes, he does in fact go to Dallas. So we're not going to be rid of him for a while. And actually, his Loser Leaves Town match is against George Weingeroff. Spoiler alert.
That's funny to me. It's funny because like the first couple of weeks, because they were doing the deal where he was subbing in for DiBiase, it felt like Boris Zukov was supposed to be somebody. And then like the second that they used him in that role for like 2 weeks. And then, like the second that he wasn't needed in that role anymore, he's a fucking enhancement guy. Which, like, to be fair, like, isn't he the one that lost to Johnny Rich twice?
Yes. By the way, even though Butch Reed pinned him after a press slam into a backbreaker and a flying tackle, Weingeroff, I'm sure, is still undefeated. Doug Vines versus Tim Horner. Thunder rolls and the lightning strikes. Horner wins with a Fed press. Do you have anything else to say about that match?
So Boyd Pierce referred to the popular Tim Horner, and I think it's time that we put Boyd Pierce out to pasture.
Oh my God, I think it's time to put what's his name, Bill Mercer, out to pasture. We'll get to that in a few minutes.
Man. Once again, it irritates me so much that Horner is actually good.
It'd be
I want him to be bad in the ring so I can hate him more, but he's not bad in the ring at all.
You want him to be bad in every facet of wrestling.
Exactly. I want him to have no redeeming qualities, but like he's a pretty decent wrestler. Like I can't really find fault with his wrestling.
Oh Lord. Mr. Wrestling 2 versus Tony Zane. There are less than 3 minutes left of TV time left on this show. So this match ain't going long. In some universes, Butch Reed versus George Weingeroff is still happening. And I don't just mean like in 1983. I mean in 2024, Butch Reed is still wrestling George Weingeroff in that fucking match.
You know what would be hell on earth?
George Weingeroff versus Tim Horner?
Yes, exactly.
Ooh. During the Butch Reed George Weingeroff 9-minute match, Tim Horner does commentary.
Oh God! You know the Butch Reed George Weingeroff match was longer than the Tim Horner match and the Mr. Wrestling 2 match combined.
Yeah. Now, of course, Mr. Wrestling 2 is almost 50 years old at this point, so it's like we don't necessarily need a 9 Mr. Wrestling 2 squash match, especially since it's 2. He's not as generous as other stars are with their jobbers. But next week, by the way, we're going to have Kamala versus Hacksaw Dugan from Houston. I note that I'm sure we'll also have the undefeated George Weingeroff here. And I note that no matter how little time is left in this show, Mr. Wrestling 2 is not going to the expiration of time. And he wins with the running knee lift. I did note that Boyd did have time to thank the people who produced the show, including The Big Show, who apparently is one of the producers.
Now, I have before we move on from Mid-South, I have a complaint to register about that main event. I find that decision a little dubious. I was watching, and I think that the bell rang to signal the time limit before the 3 count was registered. So I'm not sure about that. Allowing that decision to stand has to be the worst thing Grizzly Smith ever did.
This week's example of the worst thing Grizzly Smith ever did, by allowing this decision. Hey, we don't know. Maybe he doesn't let this decision stand. Maybe next week he comes out on TV and admits, hey, Tony Zane lasted the 3 minutes. He did not get defeated before the end of the time limit. It's like, spoiler alert, I think, actually it'll air tomorrow. Spoiler alert, Ilya Dragunov and Carmelo Hayes on WWE Speed next week. They go to the 3-minute time limit draw. So that's what this was. Tony Zane managed to last the 3 minutes, even though he got fucked in the end.
I have decided that the worst thing that Grizzly Smith ever did needs to be a recurring.
I thought that was one of our recurring jokes, along with me saying that, different celebrities and major wrestlers, listen to the show because, why wouldn't they be?
Naturally. Why wouldn't they be?
By the way, have you watched WWE Speed at all?
I watched the first 3 or 4 or so.
So last night, as we're recording this, I was at the SmackDown in Worcester. That was the first WWE Speed match I'd ever watched. And I mean, it's Ilya Dragunov and Carmelo Hayes. So I'm like, okay, it's two, I'm sorry, they're two fairly small guys in a 3-minute time limit. So I'm expecting, okay, this is going to be some real fast-paced action, boom, 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 boom. And no, it was basically take SmackDown match, make it 3 minutes, and that's what they had. It was just your average 3-minute WWE match. And I'm like, maybe it's just me, but I think they should be doing the more high speed, type of match. Now I know the winner of that match is fucking taking on Corbin, and Corbin may be a babyface. Baron Corbin did a fucking dive on SmackDown last night, and he's a babyface. He was the babyface in peril to lead to an Apollo Crews hot tag. What the fuck is going on in WWE?
An Apollo Crews hot tag in the year of our Lord 2024.
Honestly, I mean, Apollo Crews, he does a decent hot tag, but it's the fact that it's Baron Corbin, who's 6'6", 6'7". He's not super jacked, but he's got a good build, and he is the babyface in peril to lead to Apollo Crews, who's a foot shorter, and yeah, he's a lot more ripped and thicker, but still, it just seems really backwards. And I wrote,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I wrote Babyface Baron Cruz in my notes of the show.
I miss Apollo Crews being doing cool stuff in Dragon Gate and shit. That was fun.
I'm not.
But no, the WWE Speed thing, the first one, they did Ricochet and Dragon Lee, and then it's been downhill from there.
I was gonna say it's hard to go from Ricochet versus Dragon Lee to Baron Corbin versus the one who isn't Montez Ford, Enzo Dawkins, because that was the other.
So Baron Corbin is in Tim Horner territory on the wrestlers I irrationally hate list, which is not I don't know. I don't know. For a long time, I was firmly in the camp that Baron Corbin was like the worst pushed wrestler in a major promotion. But then, like, once again, he's actually gotten good. So then I can't hate him for that anymore.
Which means he's probably going to get fired soon. You know, it's the Chris Masters rule.
Just imagine Baron Corbin versus Tim Horner. What a match that would be.
And not like Tim Horner from 1993 either. We're talking about like Tim Horner 2024. Tim Horner 2024.
How old is he? Like, he's got to be.
Yeah. Tim Horner 2024.
He was in his early 20s 41 years ago. He's got to be in his 60s now.
That would be 20 plus 40 does equal 60. But 2024 Tim Horner versus 2009 Arizona Cardinal Baron Corbin, whatever the hell his real name is. That would be a match.
Yeah.
But by the way, you know, I'm not going to be one to just leave my bad joke sitting there. I did note that the Big Show is one of the producers of the show. In case you don't get my very hilarious joke, that's because the name of one of the producers is Paul White. Paul White.
Clever.
So
not Paul the Great White.
Nope, not no BS Paul White. Or the Giant. Was he just Paul White when he did that Memphis match with Hogan, or was he something else?
Yes, he was Paul White.
That's the problem. Is like Big Show may have turned babyface and heel 47 times, but he's only had 3 names. So
yeah. I liked. I got a soft spot in my heart for the Big Show, and I really liked that for his AEW entrance music, they got like the same guy that did Crank It Up and did like a sequel to that song.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, I never watched Dark, so I never saw like Big Show wrestle except that random match a few months ago where Powerhouse Hobbs body slammed him on a car.
You didn't see the pay-per-view match with QT Marshall?
No, that was one of the Double or Nothings I didn't see. That was the Punk Hangman one, wasn't it?
I think that was All Out 2021.
Maybe I don't know. I just remember that was when, because he wrestled Billy Gunn, right? Because Billy Gunn randomly turned heel, and then even though it was only Billy who was attacking Big Show, Excalibur starts calling the Ass Boys a couple scumbags, and it's like, what the hell did they do?
Yeah, they randomly turned on him, and then it was never mentioned again, and eventually, yeah. It just was never referred to again.
I know I didn't see that All Out with the Young Bucks versus the Lucha Brothers. The one where
that was the same show.
Yeah,
it was Punk and Darby Allin, Kenny Omega, Christian Cage. That's a great show. Why have you not Eddie Kingston and Miro in the opener? That's a great show. Why have you not seen that show?
I think it's because I had no interest in Kenny Omega versus Christian Cage, because this is still babyface Christian who, just won the TNA title. So technically it took away any mystery of who's going to win, because at least it was their first match. You could say, well, maybe, but they had their first match, Christian won, and he wasn't going to win twice. So it's like, and it's funny because like everyone for weeks was talking about, Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson are signing, but it was never like this official, okay, they've definitely signed kind of thing. It was always just it's probably going to happen kind of thing. So it's like, I don't know. It's like, and it's hard watching a pay-per-view after it happened when you already know what happens. I just remember that double or nothing that I thought it was, the 2021 or 2022 one. That was the one where like they were going against Eastern Conference Finals, so they added matches that went way too fucking long. So this way, the main events were after the NBA game ended, which is just really fucking stupid. Because I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I can't imagine anyone sitting here watching the NBA game on your own volition until 11 o'clock, whatever time it ends, and then going, hey, there's still an hour left of the pro wrestling pay-per-view that I didn't watch the first 3 hours of. Let's go buy that and watch it. But
yeah, no.
It was like, remember that time WWE did the pay-per-view as against an NFL game, and so they put Cena, Moxley, and AJ as the opener of the show instead of the main event.
Yeah, but that was the network, so like that's not the same as buying a $50 pay-per-view.
Exactly. It's like if you want to see that show, even if you wanted to watch the NFL game first, you just watch the goddamn thing later. And it was before Peacock, so it's like the show went up right away.
I was gonna say something else. Oh yeah, that was why. That was when I deleted the Pro Wrestling Tees app. Was when there was an AEW pay-per-view that I couldn't watch live, and they spoiled the main event with a push notification.
That was nice of them.
Yeah, it was when Punk won the title from Hangman.
So the same show I'm ranting about. Great. Okay, you want to talk about some world class? We're only 80 some odd minutes into the show. And we're still taking it here after this one ends. So
I guess we need to.
Let's go 190 miles west to the Sportatorium in Dallas, Texas. Still July 16th, 1983 for World Class Championship Wrestling. Let's go to the intro of the show with Bill Mercer.
Welcome to World Class Championship Wrestling from the Sportatorium in downtown Dallas, Texas. The international array of stars on World Class Championship Wrestling, a tremendous tag team event featuring the Mongol and Buddy Roberts against Bruiser Brody and Iceman King Parsons. And our main event is Kevin Von Erich, the aerobatic Kevin Von Erich against gorgeous Jimmy Garvin. That is a tremendous match that has a lot of family feud characteristics. Well, that's the main event, and we'll have World Class Championship Wrestling next with John Mantell and Rip Rogers.
So I had to go back and rewind that 4 times to write all that down. So, random ass tag team match, Brody and Iceman versus the Mongol and Buddy Roberts. Plus, and I still didn't even write that right because I wrote the aromatic Kevin Von Erich. It's the aerobatic Kevin Von Erich versus Jimmy Garvin. And
I never pay attention to those intros because I know you're going to play the audio anyway, so I don't need to recap it.
Well, then the funny thing is, I had to listen to it 4 times, and then I had to listen to it a 5th time because I'm like, wait a second. Isn't it supposed to be Jimmy Garvin and David Von Erich? Why did I write Kevin? I had to go back. I'm like, no, it was fucking, Kevin in this match. And I think you said that last week. I think you said last week that it was going to be Kevin. I'm like, no, it's David because they got to do the slave match. But apparently they've already done the slave match, and we'll get to that later.
Yeah, I was confused about that.
So then we get our opener. It is the brother of the Booker, Johnny Mantell, versus Rip Rogers. Now that the brother of the Booker can't be beaten by a push babyface, we're going to give him a push too. And I note that I both want this match to go to a 10-minute time limit draw and not to go to a 10-minute time limit draw. And thankfully, I guess this match did not go to the 10-minute time limit draw. Not even the 8-minute and 17-second time limit draw either.
Nope. Only 7:05.
Only 7:05. Mercer calls Garvin the colorful peacock of wrestling. Never realized I needed Jimmy Garvin versus Dalton Castle before in my life. Mantell used something that Mercer called a bang on the head, and I cared so little that I didn't even rewind to see what the hell he did that led Mercer to call it that.
It's funny. So the finish of this match was just based solely on what Bill Mercer said to explain it. A body stretch into a reverse flip. What move does that sound like?
Well, obviously, it sounds like, a side Russian leg sweep.
It sounds nothing like a side Russian leg sweep, but that was how Bill Mercer described the side Russian leg sweep. It's kind of fun to listen to these old announcers try to describe moves that haven't really been like formally named yet. I don't know who was the first person to call it the Russian leg sweep.
Who knows? And what makes it a side Russian leg sweep? And if this is a side Russian leg sweep, what is a formal Russian leg sweep?
I always liked that the Sandman did the white Russian leg sweep.
That was a good name. By the way, if you were to think like, if let's say you were blind and you're just listening to this show, what move would you think of if you heard body stretcher on a flip? Maybe, I don't know, maybe a C4?
I am thinking like a crucifix bomb, not a like a razor's edge, like you're doing a crucifix hold, but you do it like a driver, the way somebody like Austin Aries or like I think a lot of people do that kind of move now. Yoshihashi even does it now.
But yeah, I spend my time questioning how Bill Mercer knew that Rip Rogers was wearing fuchsia colored trunks and knee pads. I was more shocked that he didn't just say pink. I mean, it's not pink, it's fuchsia, but still, Bill Mercer knew that. I was amazed. He doesn't know what a side Russian leg sweep is, but he knows what fuchsia is in 1983.
It's funny. I have learned so much more about colors from being in a relationship with a blind woman for, I don't know, the last 15 years. Like when you live with a blind person, you got to describe stuff. Yeah. And like some of the questions that she'll ask me about stuff is like, I swear, like to me that I'm just like a dude. So some of this shit is like you need a fucking PhD in color theory to even understand the question. So yeah, I've learned a lot more about color theory just based on that.
Now, before we go to commercial, Bill Mercer says we're gonna look at Buddy Roberts when we come back. Normally, this is where I'd be
wait. Can't jump to Buddy Rogers yet. You got a couple of notes about this match.
Okay.
First is I continue to be concerned for Mark Lawrence's health. Did you see he is either just by the look of him, he is either drunk all the time or he is like doing a fucking radiation treatment for cancer. Like he looks like a fucking corpse.
Can we prove that he's not both drunk all the time and doing radiation treatment?
Maybe. So here's the thing about Johnny Mantell. Johnny Mantell might be halfway interesting if he was a little shithead heel. He is the most bland, boring, uninteresting babyface.
Oh, yeah.
He's like no baby faces in this territory mean it. Unless you're like a Von Erich or like a little bit like King Parsons is a little bit protected. Like every other baby face in this territory is kind of a geek.
Okay, this can't be true. Mark Lawrence is still alive, and by the way, Mark Lawrence, as I think most people know, or at least a lot of people know, he's a minister. Mark Lawrence was born in 1959, meaning that he was 23 years old.
Jesus.
And by the way, he's still alive. So those cancer treatments work for him, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. Like there's like it's not just me, right? Like there's something not right about him the last couple of weeks.
I can't say I've noticed, to be honest, but hey, I'll keep an eye out for it here. So as we were saying, Mercer said we're gonna look at Buddy Roberts, and normally I would mock that description, but since this is the first time we've seen Buddy Roberts since the hair match, technically that is a proper way to promote this next segment. We are going to look at Buddy Roberts. Let's go to our look at Buddy Roberts along with Terry Gordy.
Well, Buddy, you want to tell us about the hair? What happened to it?
I tell you what, this is the biggest ripoff that has ever happened to Buddy Roberts. I tell you the whole situation. Reunion Arena. I beat Iceman in the middle of the ring. 1, 2, 3. I didn't have to pull his tights or anything. If anybody says I did, that's a bald-faced lie. I beat him in the middle. I was supposed to have his hair. And guess what? I didn't get his hair because I got sucker punched and he got my cream and he tried to put it in my hair, but he got me just a little bit here on the eyebrow.
Is that your real hair up there?
Of course. Hey, I don't want to talk about hair. I don't want to talk about wigs.
There's a bounty on in there.
Hey, I don't want to talk about bounties. I'm telling you right here and right now, I had a serious head injury that night of the reunion. I had a brain scan. The doctor said that something is not right. I'm telling you. They told me I couldn't wrestle no more, and I said, I am wrestling. And they said, if you want to wrestle, you have to wear a helmet. I'm telling you what, I'm going to wear this helmet because I'm going to wrestle because I want Iceman. I want him in the ring. When I get in the ring, I don't want to just beat him. I want to send him back to selling ice or shining shoes. You know what I mean?
Okay, buddy.
That's all I got to say to you, Mercer.
Thank you. Terry Gordy, standing by. Buddy Roberts and the Mongol will be teaming up against the Iceman and Bruiser Brody next on World Class Championship Wrestling.
Go away, there's just something I'd like to say, and I want to say it nice and slow so everybody out there can understand. And I'll tell you this, Bill Mercer, something better be done about this. The NWA better take it in their hands and do something, because something drastic could have happened to my main man right here. It could have gotten his eye. It could have blinded him. His head is already messed up now. He's got doctor's orders to wear this helmet. So something better be done. If somebody don't take it and do something about it, I'm going to take it in my own hands, and something drastic is going to happen. I'll promise you that, Bill Mercer.
Thank you, Terry Gordy. We'll be right back.
All right. So Buddy Roberts, I mean, I think anybody listening to this kind of already knows what it probably looks like. But Buddy Roberts is wearing his pelt that's being held down by a amateur boxing headgear. And
yes.
So yeah. And we mentioned this a few weeks ago when we talked about Star Wars. He got fucked. He pinned Iceman Parsons in the hair match, and he's the one that lost his hair. But, you know, it's going to be funny. At least I think it's going to be funny. It should be funny. You know, the story of Buddy Roberts and his, is he wearing a wig? Did the Freebird hair cream only take off some of his eyebrow? I guess we're going to see here. He said that Parsons is going to go back to either selling ice or shining shoes. And Mercer tries sending it to a commercial while Gordy is there. Gordy's like, motherfucker, you are not going to commercial. I'm going to cut a promo too here. And Gordy says the NWA better do something about the situation because something drastic is about to happen.
I thought Roberts made an entirely valid point. He won the hair versus hair match, and then the other guy sucker punched him and fucked up his hair.
It's not even like, you know, the weirdness of the Jimmy Garvin match where it's like, oh, it's a reverse decision. No, decision didn't get reversed. The record book states Buddy Roberts defeated Iceman Parsons in the hair match, and the winner was the person that got his head shaved.
Very, very unfair.
I mean, it's one of those things that's like, you know, the booking wasn't airtight, brother, no matter what people will tell you. Booking in 83 wasn't always better than 2024. And I mentioned this, And I should send this question into Jim Cornette's drive-thru to see if it ever gets answered. But I wonder if this is what gave Cornette the idea to do the screw job that he does in his own hair match. I think it's next year with Candido and Ricky Morton.
So I was gonna mention it during the Jimmy Garvin match, but I think that these heels need to sign a petition or something and take it to the NWA board and demand that they do something about the blatant favoritism of the officials here in World Class Championship.
Oh yeah, David Manning. We've talked about this for weeks now. He is the most outright biased referee in favor of the Von Erichs. And, actually, it's pretty decent in this week's episode, but I mean, this is a rarity. Like, anytime that you have a referee who blatantly says that, one of the participants should be the world champion, he should not be allowed to be referee for any world title matches, because then if the champion loses the belt, that leads to a lawsuit, because if that guy was the referee and we have him on record saying that, another guy should be world champion, well, who's to say that the now former champion didn't get the shaft?
The bias of these officials is appalling.
Well, then we get a tag team match where I'm not sure what the hell everybody not named Bruiser Brody was on here. Everybody was on something. It is the Mongol and Buddy Roberts with General Skandor Akbar versus Iceman King Parsons and Bruiser Brody, to quote the drunk cancer patient Mark Lawrence.
By the way, Buddy Roberts continues to get screwed by this company. He has two great tag team partners, in Michael Hayes and Terry Gordy, and they've got him teaming with the fucking Monk.
Well, no, the Monk is somebody else. He's teaming with the fucking Mongol.
You're right, but what's the fucking difference? And I think I was thinking about that because I just watched the 1993 Raw that had the debut of Friar Ferguson, who was also fucking terrible.
Shockingly, that Norman the Lunatic did not get any better when he went to WWE.
Bastion Booger, not a great mat technician.
One day, we'll have to talk about the legitimate tag team from, April, May of 1990, WCW, Norman the Lunatic and Babyface Abdullah the Butcher.
That sounds like the worst thing ever.
And they're in a trio with Mike Rotunda.
Wow.
After Mike stopped being the captain of the team and was now the captain of the ship.
But the same Raw had we're starting the Money and Steiner Brothers feud, so we had IRS versus Scott. And we were so close to having the Varsity Club explodes.
A Starrcade 88 rematch.
Yeah.
Now, they had referenced, or they kind of referenced during that Buddy Roberts promo, a bounty. And what it was is Iceman Parsons has a $500 bounty that he will give to anyone who takes off Buddy's headgear. And it was noted that Iceman can collect his own bounty. So does that mean that he'll give himself $500 if that happens? Will Fritz take it out?
Presumably.
Add it to a future paycheck? Now, while I was before this match fell off, I don't even say fell off a cliff, but because before everything happened in this match that's about to happen, I note that imagine if Brody had wrestled Sabu, like obviously young to 93, 94 Sabu.
That actually sounds awesome. And that definitely would happen. Like, if Brody had lived he would have like within like a couple of years, like around 90, he would have done the run with Hogan. And then in like 93, 94, 95, he would have been all over ECW.
See, I don't think he ever would have gotten that run with Hogan because, he never was going to do a job. And the only person who can get away apparently with not doing
He was, though. No, so Brody, Brody was good friends with Dave Meltzer, and they talked a lot. And the way Dave always talked about, like, Brody knew, yeah, when it's time for, when he's done being, like, the menace of Japan and the top guy on all the territories, and it's time to slow his career down, he was going to go do the run with Hogan and do the jobs and make the money.
Well, by the way, to give you an idea of how smart I am currently here at 11:40 p.m. Eastern time, I just went to Cage Match to see what Brody did in 1990.
Not a lot of anything.
Spoiler, Brody did not wrestle in 1990 at all.
Not once, surprisingly.
Yes. He also didn't wrestle.
Anyway.
No,
not in 89 either. This match, here's the thing.
Brody was
the Mongol sucks.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Brody was working for 10 men. Unfortunately, the other 3 were combined to be working for -20.
Yes. This was, and Buddy Roberts is like usually good. I don't know, the Mongol sucks and King Parsons sucks, and a lot of this match was them wrestling each other, which really sucked. And this match was a fucking excruciating 11 minutes and 8 seconds.
Now, it did help that when Brody was in there, he did not let the Mongol do a fucking thing. He beat the shit out of the Mongol, and anytime Mongol tried anything, it got reversed or blocked. And then, in case you were getting any enjoyment out of Brody, Bill Mercer was working for about 25 Jonathan Coachmans. And I only put down one audio stamp, but I'm going to talk about other stuff he said. But let me go to Bill Mercer's comment on the Mongol's hair. This is another thing. It's 20 seconds long, and I had to rewind it like 10 times so I could write down word for word what he said. Let's go to that right now. I said right now.
That little hairstyle of the Mongol, of course, is for a Mongol warrior. It is his cultural display of warlike qualities, successful that they have been in the past Sundays. Now we shall test the tensile strength of these two.
Mongol's hairstyle, of course, is for a Mongol warrior. It is his cultural display of warlike qualities, successful that they have been someplace. Now we shall test the tensile strength of these two men. Among the many issues with that comment, I thought he said tinsel, like the stuff you put on the Christmas tree. But he was saying tensile, T-E-N-S-I-L-E, which according to Google is the maximum stress that a material can bear before breaking when it is allowed to be stretched or pulled, which still doesn't make any sense in this situation.
It's fucking Mongol, man. I don't even remember what I was going to say. Mongols sucked, and this match was bad because of it. But you know what? Not to jump ahead, but they did announce later that next week we're going to get a singles match between Buddy Rogers and Bruiser Brody, and that sounds amazing.
If it helps, we're not going to see Buddy Rogers versus Bruiser Brody. We're going to see Brody Roberts. The first WWE,
one of those very easy to make mistakes.
Yes, I've got to do this every week, And after a good move by Brody, he brings in Iceman. To quote Mercer again, they have that timing that they like so much. Brody turns over his duties to his smaller facsimile of strength and determination and ability, Iceman King Parsons.
What the fuck?
This is a real thing that he said.
He just says words.
And I mean, obviously, Bill Mercer in 1983 did not think that, some asshole with a pause button is going to just keep rewinding the stupid thing that he said over and over again. So they wrote down the exact. I didn't think I was ever going to end this match. You said it took 11 minutes. I think it took me 20 just because I kept rewinding it to fucking write down.
I need to hear. I need to hear Bill Mercer say, "Beat Larry Zbyszko in the Omni."
See if that's any better than Boyd Pierce.
Larry Zbyszko in the Omni.
I wanted to fast forward this match, but I was afraid I'd miss Mercer saying something preposterous. They get the heat,
and you would have, because this whole thing was fucking preposterous.
They get the heat on Parsons, who made the hot tag to Brody. I didn't even notice Brody tag him back in, but seconds later, Parsons won with she calls that the rear view. He goes after Robert's wig afterwards, but Parsons couldn't get it off, and Buddy runs away, and we'll live to see Buddy's bald head another day.
So I know the reference to she calls that the rear view, but it's actually much funnier that the proper Christian name of the move is the butt.
It's funny when Naomi started doing that on NXT season 3, they didn't call it she calls that the rear view. They didn't call it anything. So I'd never seen Iceman Parsons, or at least I'd never seen him do this before to that point. So I was calling it the butt. Yeah. I thought that was the most clever thing ever. It's the butt. She jumped up and attacked her opponent with her butt.
Yeah. I have always called it the butt, and I don't remember. I hadn't seen King Parsons. I feel like I heard Joey Styles call it that in ECW, and that's why I always called it the butt.
Who the heck in ECW used she calls that the rear view?
I don't remember. I was I was a fairly avid viewer of ECW on TNN in the year 2000, so probably somebody on there.
It's funny. Like, I loved the ECW syndicated show. When we got Sports Channel Philadelphia, in the summer of '96, so that we were watching it Tuesday nights at 11 o'clock. And it was like the greatest show ever. And it's like the TNN show was not that. That's like, and I guess it was never going to be, but
Yeah.
So
speaking of ECW, I haven't brought this up, and nothing is like set in stone, but it's being heavily considered. About 3 years ago, my buddy Ben and I started a podcast called the Oh My God Cast, an ECW retrospective. And we were going to start from like the beginning of ECW. And we made it, I don't know, maybe like 8 or so weeks in. And then, I don't know, my life fell apart. But looking at it, because I think we got into about like maybe July '93. So if I was to pick that up in a couple of months, we could be on a schedule to where we were on the same week doing ECW that you and I do Smoky Mountain. So I think it might be a pretty high probability that we may revive the Oh My God Cast here soon.
You have 3 months to convince me to do a fourth
weekly,
fifth show too, because I also bi-weekly I do the Angry Marks podcast talking about Mid-Atlantic Wrestling from 1981. Which, by the way, since I haven't
Yeah,
plugged
yeah. I think my buddy Benny Dangerously and I are going to get the band back together for that. But love to have you on as a guest.
sure, let me know.
But yeah, I had I never other than I had some of the compilation tapes, but I saw some ECW, but I didn't I never got the syndicated show. But I am glad that because of just when I started watching wrestling and then I very quickly discovered ECW on TNN, that I can say because of that I did watch ECW when it existed.
Now, of course, I would never be accused of torrenting anything, but I know that there are a lot of torrenting sites out there that you can get the entire run of ECW, not just the syndicated show, but the TNN show, all of the house shows and all that. By the way, and I should let you know this, for your show, my biggest pet peeve in the world is people who call the syndicated show Hardcore TV before, September of 99. Because until the TNN show, it was just called ECW. And they only named it Hardcore TV at that point to differentiate between that and the ECW and TNN show. But unfortunately, it's gotten to the point where retroactively the entire series has been called Hardcore TV. And I scream at pretty much anybody who says that because it's not. It's just I got a few wrestling pet peeves, that and when you are shocked that you don't win a match with a move that you've never won a match before with.
We've all got our pet peeves. My biggest one is there's no such move as a tiger bomb. It is a tiger driver.
Maybe there's no such move as a tiger bomb yet.
Now there is, funnily enough, because of Eddie Guerrero, there is a black tiger bomb.
I see. Remember when Mark Madden in the dying days of WCW, he would call the Mafia kick the Italian American Heritage kick? I know that they wouldn't do this nowadays because even with your biggest smartasses, they'd never get away with saying this. But I don't want someone to do that and the announcers have to call it the African American Tiger Bomb.
I liked in ECW, Joey Styles would always if Nunzio did an Irish whip, it was an Italian whip, shit like that.
That got annoying sometimes when it's like you'd see the same move performed by 4 people on the same show and it'd be called 4 different names. And it was like, suddenly I became Brian Alvarez screaming about calling it the Swanton Bomb instead of the Senton Bomb.
But here's the thing, though, because I actually remember that. I remember when he kind of started, it was right around the time I started watching wrestling, was when he started doing that move. And I vividly remember JR calling it a senton one week. And then the next week, he explained that that's not actually a senton. And he's called it the Swanton, so we're going to call it the Swanton. But a senton is the move that Dick Togo does.
Yes.
He doesn't do the move that Jeff Hardy does, the Swanton. That is a senton atomico.
And I always like, Sean O'Hare, fucking 6'5", 280 pounds, fucking agile as hell. I always liked his version of it. Even though it looked
that was cool.
It looked more like a Senton Atomico headbutt because he usually sprung out too far and would hit them with the back of his head. But
yeah.
Sean
O'Hare was really fucking impressive, man. It's a pity that his career didn't go better.
He's one of those people. It's like you kind of wonder because I know Bischoff was high on him when Bischoff was buying WCW, that, Sean O'Hare was going to be one of those stars of the future kind of guys. But then you start wondering, would it really have worked out for him either way? I mean, we'll never know for sure, but he's definitely one of those guys that got screwed on the WWE push.
Yeah. Well, see, everybody remembers that Devil's Advocate gimmick and like thinks of it as a huge missed opportunity. Like if they would have done a serious thing and like pushed him hard and like had him with like Piper as a manager, like I think he could have been a big star with that character. But maybe I don't know. I don't exactly know what Sean O'Hare's personal life was like at the time, so it may not have gone well anyway. But I think a lot of people consider that Devil's Advocate character a missed opportunity.
Yeah, I think putting him on with Piper was a mistake because in theory, it was a good combination, but Piper is so cartoony that it was just too over the top. And not saying that Devil's Advocate character wasn't over the top, but it's like it was a different kind of over the top. Especially with Piper in 2003, it's like this shit was not going to be serious. And O'Hare needed a little bit more seriousness at the time, but it's like it was a great idea for gimmick. I like, his promo ability. Like, he obviously did a little bit of work, but I liked his delivery.
Do you remember it was like Judgment Day 2003? They did that Roddy Piper Mr. America match.
The only time Piper ever jobbed to Hogan in WWE.
That's what I was gonna say. I'm pretty sure that's the only time Hogan ever pinned Piper in WWE.
I mean, actually, it wasn't Hogan. I think it was Kurt Angle under the mask, or maybe Curry Man.
Curry America.
Ethan Carter III, Mr. What was he? He was USA guy, and for one.
Ethan Curry III.
By the way, there's a Jimmy Garvin promo that I've been wanting to play now, but I tracked us and it's been like 10 minutes. So let's go to Jimmy Garvin, who we've been talking about how he's supposed to have this slave match with David Von Erich. Spoiler alert, that match has already happened. And yes, it is the result that you already know happened. But let's go to Jimmy Garvin to discuss it. And they are at apparently the World Class Talk Show set.
At our world-class championship wrestling studios, I asked gorgeous Jimmy Garvin his feelings of the recent Texas Heavyweight Championship bout with David Von Erich.
Does it really matter how gorgeous Jimmy Garvin feels? I mean, man, since when does everybody care about how I feel or what I say? It's my analysis of what happened in Reunion Arena when I, without a shadow of doubt, defeated David Von Erich for the Texas Heavyweight title. Not the first time, ladies and gentlemen. May I explain to you that I have beat him in several occasions in the past. Reunion Arena was just another defeat on David Von Erich's part by gorgeous Jimmy Garvin. And then the title was awarded to gorgeous Jimmy Garvin, the new Texas Heavyweight Champion. Story's not over yet. And then the NWA officials and the referee reversed a decision because of some film. I have the film. I reviewed the film. It is a conspiracy against the greatest wrestler in the world. It is a conspiracy because she did not interfere. She was protecting herself. If you watch the film closer, you will notice that he's kicking at her face. You know he's hit her before. He has hit her before, ladies and gentlemen.
He's spanked.
And he hit her before. And now everybody's claiming that she interfered, which once again proves the conspiracy. I no longer hold the Texas Heavyweight title.
And a part of the stipulation by the NWA that evening was that you were to have another match with David Von Erich, and the loser would be the valet, in all respect to Sunshine, to the winner. Now, that match has been held. You lost, and you will be the valet to David Von Erich.
Listen, it's like part 5 of a bad dream. It's like part 5 of a nightmare that doesn't seem like there's going to be an end. I am not going to be nobody's valet. Sunshine is not going to be nobody's valet. I know what the plan was. It all ties in, Bill Mercer. I've been trying to tell the people that it's a conspiracy against the greatest athlete in America today, in fact, in the world, and I am not going to do those mediocre chores.
Now, so let's talk about those mediocre chores. First place, the NWA says that will be done because that was part of the rules of that match, and you will take part as a valet. Now, you had a list if you had won. David Von Erich had a list if he was going to win. Part of that list that you're supposed to do is clean out his horse stables, mow with a hand mower, the old-fashioned hand mower, 175 acres. Sunshine would wash David Von Erich's clothes, clean the house, and do whatever chores around that he saw fit. Now, that is the stipulation. Those are the things you'll do as a valet.
First of all, that's your opinion. That's your opinion if I'm going to do them. I'm not going to do them.
You want to keep wrestling?
Yes, I want to keep
wrestling.
Well,
the NWA says you've got to. You're not going to continue wrestling here.
The NWA says we have to, or I don't get a job.
That's right.
That's what it boils down to. The jealousy has been carried so far that they're going to terminate my professional career as long as Sunshine's professional career over something that never happened, ladies and gentlemen. We did not do anything wrong. We are victims of the Von Erichs in Texas, and we are not going to lie down. We are not going to take this like a bunch of sleeping momos in the woods. We are the greatest thing in the world today, and I am not going to be nobody's valet, and neither is Sunshine. I can't even imagine mowing grass with a lawnmower.
Have you ever done that? Have you ever cleaned out a horse stall?
Come on, get real, man. No, I've never done that.
Well,
horse stalls stink. I don't like them. She doesn't do dishes. She don't do those. We do not do them, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? Just take a look. Look at your television screens and tell me, do I need to be cleaning out horse stalls? Do I need to be cutting up grass? No,
well,
I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it.
Well, I think the NWA will insist, if you want to continue wrestling here, that you do it. And we are going to see you in action on the next time that we
I'll
visit
have him in
with
another
you.
match, anytime, any place, any stipulation. I beat him before. I will beat him again. David Von Erich, listen to gorgeous Jimmy Garvin. Anytime, any place, any stipulation.
Well, the NWA insists that you will serve as David Von Erich's valet, and when that happens, World Class Championship Wrestling will be there.
Okay. So, they always say that, like, the best heel, they're able to, make an excuse, a valid excuse for anything they do or anything that happens to them. And, we saw the Star Wars show. We saw, Sunshine interfered, holding down David Von Erich's foot. But, they're able to convince themselves that because of the footage we've seen on this show, where, David grabbed Sunshine, put her over his knee and spanked her. It's like, hey, look, he's hitting her. He's put his hands on her. And so we're worried for her. And so, yeah, when Sunshine was afraid that David was kicking at her, that she grabbed his foot to stop him from kicking at her. And I mean, it's complete bullshit. I mean, the fans know that it's complete horseshit, but it's like, it's a heel justifying, his action, even though everyone knows it's bullshit.
Yeah, true. All true.
I don't know. Are you sad that we don't actually see the match? I am, but I'm not, because we've seen them wrestle, I think, at least 4 times on the show since we started watching. So I can't imagine the match itself would be any different. Just the end result.
I was just really confused. So, I tried to look at the results, and I think that match happened in Fort Worth. So, was it the mysterious Fort Worth TV that we never hear anything about? That apparently, half the territory happens on, that we just never hear referenced at all.
I believe so.
Because the show that we watched, that was the show that was syndicated all over the country and in Israel and shit, right?
Yeah.
And then the Fort Worth show, I think, was just the DFW Metroplex, or Central Texas.
Yeah, and the funny thing is WWE does have those shows because, on the World Class DVD that they did, like they show promos and they show things from that from those shows. So it's not like WWE, oh, it's just, it was lost to time or whatever. But yeah, for whatever reason, they're just not putting those shows up on the Cock, and even before the Cock, they were putting them up on the WWE network.
You see, there's that new WWE Vault YouTube channel. It's like they're putting shit up like this week. They put up the Takeshi Morishima dark matches from like 2007, 2008, and apparently they're asking like, well, what do people want to see uploaded? And of course, a bunch of people are saying dumb shit like, "Oh, The Rock's best moments." And somebody at wrestling playlist on Twitter, I think it's at PWO Lost, great follow, is talking about based on like what he could figure out, based on like what would be aired on TV in the 80s. They probably have in that library like every Greensboro Coliseum show from like till like 88, like pretty much every Omni show. WWE almost certainly has every Madison Square Garden show, at least up to like, I don't know, I would think somewhere in the 70s. Like as soon as they could feasibly record that shit, they have every Garden show. So like there's so much potential for shit that they could put out, and that I like if they're not gonna put that shit on a streaming service or like Peacock, or if they're gonna go to Netflix when that deal is over, just take shit like that like nobody really cares about except for fucking wrestling nerds like us. Just fucking put that shit on YouTube, man. Like the World Class fucking Fort Worth TV and like all the fucking like Crockett house shows that you have. You've got that shit in your library. Like at least if you fucking put it on YouTube, at least you're monetizing it. Come on, Endeavor. You just spent all that money acquiring this company. You got to figure out how to monetize it. Fucking put obscure Omni house shows on YouTube and the wrestling nerd.
Now, I'm sure because they had the last Battle of Atlanta up on the original network at one point.
Yeah.
So assuming they own the Georgia library, I want to see them like.
Yeah.
I don't know how far back they have because obviously not everybody saved their tapes. I want to see them go back as far as they can with the 605 show, whatever you want to call it, whether it be Georgia Championship Wrestling, World Championship Wrestling. What also, I mean, I get, it's a failure, it's a black eye for them, but like, why don't they ever put up the entire run of the WWF on TBS? Like, I know there are a few episodes hanging around YouTube, but it's like, you know what? There's an audience for everything. That all up. I want to see that year run or
I want to see Florida TV from like whatever they have, like the 70s and 80s. Like Florida during that period seems like very much my kind of territory.
I want the July 99 through July 2005, the 6-year run of Cornette booking OVW. Like nobody has.
Yeah, they own. Yeah, they own that stuff too. They own it.
Yeah, there's no torrenting sites that have it, or at least one that I've seen. Yeah. Actually, Nick Dinsmore was briefly putting them up on YouTube, and I don't think they're there anymore, or if they are, he stopped. Because I'm gonna bet, because WWE owns the footage, they probably, copyright striked it. So I mean that would stop me from doing it if it was me. But yeah,
and also like I don't even know if they're on Peacock, but they only ever put like 3 or 4 episodes of Smoky Mountain TV on the network, and they own all that. That's how Cornette fucking finally got his money back out of Smoky Mountain when he sold the tape library.
Makes me wonder if Rick Rubin got any of that money out of it. But
I don't know. Was he an investor or just a donor?
I mean, I'm led to believe, and I wasn't running the books, but it's like basically it was Rick Rubin's money plus, whatever Cornette could contribute to or needed to contribute to at different points.
Yeah.
But
Cornette he was into it at least six figures of his own money.
But you want to talk about him selling out, quote unquote, to the WWF. It's like that WWF run helped fund Smoky Mountain at times.
Yeah. That he's going to start in here in a couple of months in WWE, and that probably financed the last 2.5 years of Smoky Mountain.
And as embarrassed as he is, and it's funny because I've seen that Royal Rumble casket match with Undertaker and Yokozuna 8 million times, and I guess there's a reason I never noticed Jim Cornette. It's like I never noticed him hiding out of the way, and until he mentioned it, and it's like, oh yeah, like he is purposely like hiding so he can't be seen during this whole thing.
I always mix up that match with the Survivor Series casket match. The Survivor Series was the one where Chuck Norris roundhouse kicks Jeff Jarrett, right?
Yes. And I love that Survivor Series 94 with Bret and Backlund in the submission match. And
I love that match. I think like a lot of people like that's kind of a polarizing match. Like I feel like you either hate it or you love it, and I fucking love it.
I loved it as a kid, and I was 10 years old, so it's like I did not have the attention span for a 35-minute match, especially when like 15 minutes of it is just them laying on the ground in a cross-faced chicken wing. But I loved that match as a kid, and I love it now.
Yeah. Well, I remember reading a review of it when I was young, and like it sounds boring, but then I actually watched it for the first time like within the last 5 years, and that match fucking rules. I love Bob Backlund. Like I've been watching '93 WWF. Fucking, I just watched from the European tour in '93. Backlund wrestled Shawn Michaels in an Intercontinental title match, and they went like 13 minutes, and it was so good. Bob Backlund rules.
Backlund had I don't say an awful reputation because that makes it sound bad, but he had a awful reputation as a wrestler in '93 because as a babyface he was still that fucking redhead smiley 1970s babyface that it's like he stood out and not in a good way. And it's like then when he turned heel, it's like like something snapped in him when he turned heel. Like, by the way, we talk about the Bret Hart Backlund Survivor Series match. The Bret Hart Backlund match on Superstars when Bret beats him, and it's Backlund's first title match since he lost the title a decade earlier, and Bret goes to shake his hand and Backlund snaps and turns heel. That was a great TV match. If you've never seen that, I'd recommend going out of your way and seeing that. And it's funny because like WWF has such especially the mid '90s WWF that we're in, they had that reputation of having a whole bunch of shit wrestling. And I mean, I guess when you're putting Bret Hart in long matches with the 1, 2, 3 Kid and Bob Backlund, it's something. But it's like they had a lot of good wrestling in '93, '94, '95. It's just that you easily remember the shit more than you remember the good stuff.
Okay, I have been watching both Raw and WCW Saturday Night from early '93, and with the exception of shit like Ricky Steamboat and Brian Pillman or Cactus Jack and Vader, with the exception of like rare shit like that, the overall quality of wrestling is a lot higher on Raw.
What was that tag match I told you about a few weeks ago?
The Wrecking Crew against somebody.
I think it was like Eric Watts and somebody, and it's like it was -2 stars by Dave. You remember that match when you eventually got to it?
I do because you said something to me about it. I don't know. I didn't think it was that bad. Like some of those matches are just so fucking interminably long that if it's like a competently executed squash match. But I don't really remember the match. Like, it wasn't bad enough that it made an impression on me for how bad.
When World Championship Wrestling officially became WCW Saturday Night in April of '92, they started doing 2 out of 3 falls matches like every week, which sounds like, because they had a decent enough roster, so it sounds good. But it'd be like things like Greg Valentine and Terry Taylor versus, the Freebirds in a 2 out of 3 falls match. Like, who the fuck would want to see that? I mean, who the fuck would want to see them in a 1 fall match? But, especially 2 out of 3.
Yeah.
By the way, we're still talking about World Class too, as we, have long since passed the 2-hour mark of this podcast. we're running out of energy here, people. So let's bring it to an end. We're running out of energy for the main event. Main event. Here we go. It is Jimmy Garvin with his capable valet Sunshine versus the high flying Kevin Von Erich. Not that she ever looked bad, but Sunshine looks damn good tonight, I thought. And
I really appreciated the quality of her facial reactions to what was going on. Like, I don't know, I don't pay like a ton of attention to the valets and managers a lot of the time, but I just happened to notice that, like, yeah, for someone, I don't know a lot about her, but like she did a really good job. And yeah, she's a very very, very pretty lady.
So Mercer starts talking about Kevin's standing kick, and he talks about how Kevin is finely tuned to defy gravity. His standing kick, by the way, is what the vast majority of us would call a drop kick.
It is a very nice drop kick.
Definitely.
Kevin Von Erich hit a hell of a drop kick.
There was a lot of chain wrestling in this match. I don't know if it's like one of those shows where everyone had to wrestle twice. So it's like, let's just go out there, keep it simple, and just get to the end of the match here. But like, it was a lot of exchanging of holds. Kevin put on a head scissors, and Garvin screamed loud enough to be heard in Oklahoma.
That was great.
Kevin, like, I know, like I said, they were exchanging holds a little bit, but by and large, Kevin had the advantage for, the first 6 or 7 minutes of the match. Garvin got the heat for about 40 seconds before Kevin made his comeback, winning with a head scissors into a roll-up.
So Jimmy Garvin, I feel like, kind of has a little bit of a shitty reputation based on like the latter day Freebirds, like the 89-90 run, when he and Hayes decided that they didn't have to sell for anybody and they were a pain in the ass to deal with. But like, this Jimmy Garvin is really fucking good.
There were a few, things I'd like to see, and one is, was it Dr. Death who was beating the shit out of Jimmy Garvin with the chair? Because Jimmy wasn't selling.
Yes. Yeah. That was the one. That's another story that Cornette has told very thoroughly. You go look it up because he tells it better than I'm going to. But that was the one, the night in Boston, that everybody was so mad. They got to the back. They said it might have come to blows between like fucking Doc and Gordy or Doc and Garvin or somebody. But Bobby Eaton, who everybody loves and who was like the most peaceful person, was like the one that chewed out fucking Garvin and Hayes, and everybody was like, well, if we pissed off Bobby, we might want to fucking chill.
By the way, after the match, Garvin realized he did not get his ass kicked enough in this match, so he attacks Kevin from behind, and Kevin immediately turns the tables on him and kicks his ass.
Another dropkick. Excellent dropkick. This was pretty decent. A very wrestling-oriented match, like you said, but I liked it.
Honestly, I mean, not there's a lot of competition, but best match on the show.
Yeah, like I said, I really have come to appreciate Garvin lately, and I continue to think that Kevin is the best out of the brothers.
I kind of, feel bad for Jimmy Garvin because it's like he plays this pussy gimmick for so long, and technically his feud with Ric Flair is what led to Ronnie Garvin winning the world title. And so it's like, I can picture him kind of going, okay, maybe I can make myself a little bit more of a hard ass here, but I put on a little bit of muscle, put on a little bit of whatever. But it's like, it just really didn't work. Yeah, it's like, especially when you see the Jimmy Garvin of '83, like this Jimmy Garvin is fucking amazing. But also, I don't think there really would have been a place for this Jimmy Garvin in 1990 WCW.
But Jimmy Garvin, the kind of steady, upstanding, the kind of man you trust to land a plane for you, you know?
But did you ever see Super Brawl 4?
Super Brawl 4, would that have been 94?
Yeah, Flair Vader in a cage, and another 6-man cage match. But,
I don't think so.
So there was supposed to be a match between Johnny B. Bad and Michael Hayes. And I forget the specifics, but Jimmy Garvin randomly shows up. And Garvin, he announces that he's been retired and he's now an airplane pilot. And him and Hayes, they beat up Johnny B. Bad, so the match doesn't even start. And then Nick Bockwinkel comes out and says that, oh, it's going to be Jimmy Garvin wrestling Johnny B. Bad instead. And, and if Jimmy Garvin doesn't wrestle, he's suspended from WCW for life. And it's like, Mitch just said he's retired and doesn't wrestle anymore. Why would he care if he got suspended for life?
So yeah, that was my joke that Jimmy Garvin, in fact, retired from wrestling and became an airline pilot. I think like aren't he and Precious still together? As far as I know, I think like they stayed together.
Like Adrian Street and Miss Linda. It's like, of all, you always hear like no relationships in wrestling last, especially when they go on TV, but every so often, a few of them make it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to play it, but the show ends with a Buddy Roberts promo in an empty arena for some reason, talking about the bounty on his head. I'm sure this was an intentional slip of the tongue, but he says Brody was trying to take off his wig, and he yells, "It's not a wig!" And then he starts talking about the Bible, and I think he starts talking about Samson, but then stops himself mid-sentence and switches it to David and Goliath. Anyway, next week it's Buddy versus Brody.
That should be good.
So we've got 2 hours and 20 some odd minutes.
Was that a new record for one show?
Oh yeah. This is officially the record holder, and
it's because we talked about a bunch of like nothing for the first 30 minutes.
We talked about TV, and everyone loves TV.
That's true.
All right. But so let's call it a day, since we're going to be back, on Thursday, not, in 5 minutes. But do anything you want to say to our fine listening audience?
Cherish your electricity and internet access.
There you go. Cherish your electricity and internet access, everybody. Thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you again in 7 days.
Bye.